Welcome to the Culture Chat hosted by WorkXO. Our mission is to upgrade work. Find out more about our Workplace Genome Project at workxo.com. And now, over to our host for today.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of the Culture Chat podcast. My name is Jamie Notter. I'm with WorkXO, and as usual, I have my partner, Charlie Judy, here. Charlie, how you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for having me, and thanks for being the DJ that you are.
This has always been a lifelong dream of mine. How did you know that? That's amazing.
This is it. You made it.
I certainly don't have the face for television, so this is better for me, I think. All right, we are going to do another edition of our podcast where we talk to someone who is really smart about a topic related to culture. And today we have an HR leader from an interesting company, Carfax, which we will talk about when we hand it over to her. But I am really interested to hear about the cool stuff that she's doing there and that they're doing there around their culture, and particularly around teams. So that's what we're going to dig into. But I'll turn it over to Charlie to set it up and introduce our guest.
Yeah, so thanks, Jamie. And I'm also excited to have this conversation with Adrian Webster, who is the VP of HR at Carfax. I'm pretty sure Carfax is the biggest brand name that we've hosted on this
I think that is true.
podcast.
That is true.
So we're gonna make sure to milk that for all it's worth.
Exactly.
And I love Carfax. I'm a customer. We're one of those people that, one of those families that drives their car until it like falls apart on the highway. And so, which by the way, we've got two in the garage that are very close to that point.
Having been in your car,
yeah.
I can attest that is actually true. So yes.
Thank you. Yeah, Jamie has heard the rattles and the shakes and the booms and the clatters.
Exactly.
But I count on Carfax to help me think about my next vehicle. And so, awesome service, awesome kind of maturity model and evolution and rapid growth and high performance teams and lots of stuff I think we can learn about from Adrian and how that correlates to culture. So let's start, Adrian, by you're just kind of introducing yourself briefly, and then Jamie will kick it off as he always does with the one big question.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you, Jamie and Charlie, for having me. I really am looking forward to this talk. I'm very passionate about people and building winning teams. And so, to have an opportunity to chat with you guys this afternoon is a dream come true for me. So thank you. So just a little bit about Carfax. I mean, Charlie, you had mentioned, that you're also a Carfax customer. I think that, when I think about culture, one of the most important things about culture to me is really making sure that people are connected to the purpose. And at Carfax, our purpose and our mission is to provide really great, trusted information to help people when they're shopping, buying, owning, and selling their cars. It's all about giving consumers confidence. So I'm looking forward to really, sharing with you guys this afternoon about how, that purpose is really helping us create a winning team.
Cool. And and winning team is the operative word here, because that's something I think we want to talk about. I want to hear more about what that specifically means. The idea of team is obviously important in organizations, something that I've been focused on. My background's in conflict resolution, so I've done a lot of sort of teamwork in my career. But the big question that we want to get at sort of zeroes in on breaking down what that means, which is really also very important to me right now. And that is, what are the building blocks, which is a term that we use all the time, actually, when we talk about culture. But what are the building blocks to a winning team culture? What's it made up of?
Yeah. So I think, the first thing that I would say when we talk about, building blocks and who's responsible for those building blocks, a lot of times, especially being in HR, a lot of people will congratulate me that, on the fact that we just won another award, and isn't that great? Your team's doing such a great job. And where I'd like to take all the credit, I certainly can't. A great culture is really created and sustained by a team. It's not one person. It's not a department. It's created and sustained by a group of people. So, one of the core concepts, I think, when we talk about winning team culture is everybody needs to be accountable for that culture. Everybody needs to be accountable for recommending somebody who's going to be this great leader for us. So decentralized ownership is one of the key core concepts when it comes to what's important to creating that winning team culture. The second that I would say is, we're a big believer in harness wisdom of crowds. We believe that, winning teams, get a lot of feedback because we know that we're smarter together. We also play to strengths, right? We focus on strengths because, not everybody can do everything. And so it's important that people trust each other enough to say, hey, I'm not good at this, I need your help. Transparency is the other, I think, really key building block there, making sure that people have access to information so that they're informed and so that they can make the best decisions. And then when they do make decisions, we want everybody to really focus on doing what's best for Carfax.
Mm-hmm. Hey, on the transparency, sorry, Charlie, but on the
No, go ahead.
On the transparency piece, this is something we talk about a lot with organizations. I think of all the markers that we've been measuring in our culture assessment so far, transparency's been one of the more traditional list scoring. In other words, this is a tough one. People get scared about sharing information. It makes them nervous. Like, what do you guys do to sort of make sure that transparency happens?
Well, I think that, the first thing is, and I'll go back to one of our other core concepts, that wisdom of crowds. Mm-hmm. One of the key things about transparency is, it shouldn't make you nervous because people should have an opportunity to provide input to the decisions. One of the key things that we do here at Carfax is, we have a very clear game plan that changes every year. Everybody in the company, actually, Dick Raines, who's the president of Carfax, he will meet with every single team in the organization to go over, here's what we're thinking of for the next year. And then every single employee in the organization gets to vote on what they think the priorities should be. And it's not that, it's not based on, their team and what's best for their team. It's based for, if you were running the company, how would you kind of rank these priorities? So when you get buy-in up front from people and you listen and you make decisions, then transparency becomes a much easier philosophy and way of life.
Yeah, I mean, one of the things that we're starting to find in the data that we've collected or we continue to collect is that there are these really interesting downstream implications and correlations between one culture marker and another. So, we talk about inclusion as being also this sense of ownership and responsibility for the success of the organization. That also leads to transparency. Like, I love that. And finding out which are foundational enough to driving the kinds of behaviors you're looking for is the real challenge. I want to go back to the accountability piece because it's the piece that in my 25 years as an HR leader maybe struggled with the most. And I think we quickly go to this, with that model of, what do you do with the rainmaker that's also a jerk, And I don't know if that's the best scenario to describe how you all deal with accountability. Maybe it's not so harsh, maybe it's not so stark, but talk more about what that means for you guys.
Yeah, so it's funny that you say that because we do have some guidelines that every single employee that's a part of Team Carfax is expected to play by. We call it our playbook. And one of the attributes on our playbook is we say no jerks allowed. That is specifically spelled out on our playbook. We do, another concept is being a straight shooter. So it's really important for good teamwork to make sure that you can have healthy conflict, and not everybody has to agree. And we actually think that we make better decisions when there is good, healthy conflict because we learn from each other, right? We want to debate through some of those tough calls. But we want to do it in a way that's respectful, which is also a part of our playbook. So it's these, the tension between these dynamics that I think is a really interesting thing. We ask people, let's make sure, share your opinion, and especially if it's different, that's when we really want to hear it because we don't want a bunch of people who are just going to say yes. We want to hear about the things that we're not considering. As long as it's done in a very respectful way, I think that we can all work together. And that's really good for teamwork, right? You want to be able to trust the people that you work with enough to say, I don't have all the answers, I need some help, or what do you think about this? And then at the end of the day, we know that with everybody, everybody contributing to the conversation, that we're going to make the best decisions possible.
And in terms of the playbook, which is another term that Charlie and I like, we use that up with the clients all the time, but okay, no jerks allowed, I got it, but how detailed does the playbook spell that out? Because that's one of and even the term respect, I hear that all the time, like, oh, you need respect here. I'm like, okay, but I find that differently. So how detailed does it get when you sort of in spelling it out?
Oh, no, well, not detailed at all. I mean, we have, essentially what we say about, no jerks allowed is we have the attribute is be a straight shooter. We want you to say what you do and do what you say. No jerks allowed. There's a way of expressing your opinion, right? But part of that, if we don't hire people who need everything to be explicit, part of the great thing about going to work is being able to use your judgment and having autonomy. And so we're not big on a lot of rules or having, a lot of details. You can do this, you can't do that. It really is like just a couple of core concepts that we expect everybody to follow. And they're not hard. They're not difficult to understand. But they are just they are foundational. Like, you have to do this. And if you're not playing by the playbook, then you're not a fit for Carfax.
Mm-hmm.
So let me run something by you. I don't know if this is going to head us like way on a tangent here that we can't pull back, but I mean, part of what I'm hearing a little bit, although you didn't say this explicitly, is there's a little bit of a yin and yang. Like you can have this as long as we do this, or as long as we commit to this. I mean, like so the wisdom of crowds for you, and that's not an unalienable right. I mean, it's that you have to be a member of that crowd in a respectful way. You have to recognize that what you have to say may not always, take hold or be recognized. I mean, is there a little bit of that? Like, there's always some give and take, or am I taking that too far?
No. I think that there's always going to be a tension between these concepts, right? I mean,
that's the term they use. I love tension. That's great.
Yeah. I mean, straight shooter is not going to give you a license to just say whatever you think, in the way that that just kind of rolls off your tongue. You've got to be respectful too, and you can be straight and respectful and engage in healthy conflict. Sometimes it's not what you say, it's how you say it. And so, part of being a good team player is, trusting the people that you work with. And, without having trust, you can't have those conversations, and you can't, I think, really form that bond that is so critical in order to really, truly work together without any silos or politics.
And when you guys set up these guidelines, these rules, which I think they're great. I'm a big fan of this stuff. Do you make a connection between the playbook concepts and what drives your success as an organization? In other words, it's not like these are all great ideas, but that doesn't mean you should follow them. I mean, are you able to tie it back to, and we're better because of them?
Yeah, so that's interesting. So, Carfax is growing really, really rapidly. And so one of the things that we wanted to do is we didn't create a playbook by sitting down and thinking, what is it that we think is going to allow us to be successful? What we created it because we wanted to preserve the best of our culture as we grow. We knew it was important to kind of capture on paper the key principles that was going to help us grow smarter, especially as we, we're hiring more people and had managers that were coming in. We really wanted to capture, the secret sauce, for example. And so, we did it using our wisdom of crowds process. It started off by just kind of capturing, what is it that makes how we work unique and different, and what sets us apart from other organizations. Let's work and try to capture that on paper. So we came up with our playbook, and then we actually socialized it across the organization in the same way that, Dick would meet with people on an annual basis to talk about our game plan. He went on what I'll call the Playbook Roadshow. He took it out to all of the different teams, met with them, got some really great feedback. We adjusted the playbook, and then it became this living document. So it wasn't one of those things where we were trying to create something that was going to be inspirational. It was really more, this is how we are already, and let's just make sure that we maintain it.
So how do you make sure you maintain it? Like we talk a lot about the power of kind of getting and staying intentional about culture, and that it takes more than just believe me, even you're having a playbook goes further than most organizations go, but having that is not enough, right? Like there are things that you have to do, and you have to be intentional about every day. So, I mean, what do you do? Do you measure it? Do you have metrics? Do you have powwows every now and then? Just how do you make sure that you're actually maintaining it?
Yeah, so we do a lot of different things. The first thing is that we've used it in our space. So if you're in our office, we have playbook decals everywhere. They're in the conference rooms, they're on the walls, they're creative. So you'll walk into a conference room and you'll see no jerks allowed. You'll walk into another room and it'll say get feedback, we're smarter together. So we have captured it physically in our space as a reminder. We also have a playbook wall that we use as a reminder as well. It's part of the orientation. When somebody goes through our orientation, they have to sign the playbook wall. So we've got, there's that physical component. But then there's also this thing where, it's also got to be embedded in everything that you do. So we've embedded it in everything from our hiring, our performance management. We have an employee recognition program called STARS. We have celebrations that we hold. It's everywhere. We have a great manager program, and as part of that, what we're trying to do is, we expect great managers to do three things. And one of them is that they have to, really reinforce great teamwork and use the playbook. So, people are held accountable to the playbook. It's in our systems. It's visible. And, it's every single employee uses it. When somebody comes and, we're not a perfect organization, conflict is everywhere. Most of the time it's healthy. Sometimes people don't like conflict and they kind of struggle with what's the best way to give this feedback. And so, as far as how I work and my team works in kind of coaching people is, well, let's talk through these things. And so it's used for coaching. And it's always, if somebody doesn't want to go give that feedback, then we'll say, hey, it's not part of our culture is that you have to give this feedback, So we do believe it's something that is practiced on a daily basis. It's just part of who we are. It's DNA.
Yeah, I'm having a conversation yesterday actually with a CEO of a small organization who's doing work on culture, and they did the work to get really clear that you've already talked about, like sort of they basically have written up their version of your playbook. And she's now doing just what Charlie asked about, which is like, all right, then how do we get intentional about this? And she said, I got one of my millennial employees and I dubbed her the culture guru. And she said to the millennial employee, I need you to keep me honest on this stuff. And this millennial employee loves the culture stuff, so she was all jazzed by it. She was like, keep me honest, hold me to this. If I'm drifting off, I want you to, you have permission to sort of get in my face about it. And I think that piece about, you mentioned managers, but that piece about making like stewardship of the culture a piece of people's job, right?
Yeah.
Like it's not all their job, but it is expected that when that behavior that is kind of off comes up, people go, whoa, that's not how we do that here.
Well, and really it's a piece of everybody's job, right? It's creating that stewardship maybe explicitly with a particular group or person, but it's also helping people understand that there's all some level of stewardship there.
Yep, it goes back to one of those core concepts that we talked about at the beginning of the conversation, which is really decentralized ownership. I don't own culture, everyone owns the culture. I don't own the playbook, everyone owns the playbook. And we really believe it and practice it.
Yeah, I love that.
Cool.
Are you able to, and you obviously you don't have to, disclose anything here, but are you able to point to people in your organization and go, you know what, that person is successful because they're bright and they're talented, but also because they really embody and live by what we've deemed to be important to our success?
Yeah, I mean, we do it all the time. One of the ways that in creating the playbook, one of the things that we did is we thought about, like, who are the people who we feel represent the Carfax DNA the best, and what is it that they do differently, right? So, yeah, I mean, there's people all over the organization that I can say, this is a person who I think really portrays what it really means to be a team player. There's someone for each of these. And, in our meetings, our great manager meetings, one of the things that we did, we talked about our playbook, and we actually had managers from throughout the business come up and give examples of how they embody this particular concept in their day-to-day practice. So there was that learning from other managers. So it is something that we take very seriously. And, you had mentioned before, how do you measure? Well, we have employee surveys. We survey our employees annually. We're very much a culture of feedback. We're highly collaborative. And so we reach out to our employees regularly and we ask them, are we living by our playbook? What do you think? And, some of the key concepts that are included on our playbook are included on our survey. So we have a pulse. And back to our whole philosophy on transparency, those survey results, the team results, all of that is on the intranet, right? So, everybody can see how other teams are feeling throughout the business. In addition to that, going back to that decentralized ownership, after we have those survey meetings, or after we get the survey results, we have survey meetings with the team. And, it used to be, back in the old days, HR would lead those meetings and we'd say, here's what I think that you guys need to fix. Let's talk about how you can do it. And now managers lead those meetings. HR is there to support, but the managers and the teams lead those meetings because at the end of the day, they look at their survey results, they figure out, like, what are the things that we need to change, and they come up with their own action plan. And we help them and partner with them to make sure that, the goals they set after they receive the surveys, we check in and see how they're doing, what steps they're taking, all of those things. But at the end of the day, there is that ownership back at that team level.
And at least you're having the meetings, because the number of sort of stories I hear of, like, yeah, we did a survey and the boss didn't like it and no one saw the results.
No, but that's why people should see the results. You can't.
Or even worse. Yeah, or even worse, the organizations that say, yeah, we don't want to do a survey because we're afraid of what we'll find out.
Yeah, right. I'm already disappointed in the results, so I'm not going to ask.
Right. Yeah, but that's if you're serious about making sure that you do have a good culture, you need that, the good, the bad, the ugly, right? You have to understand the problems that exist, or you can't fix them.
Yeah. Now that is our mantra, that you need to start with what is, and whatever is has to be the starting point for whatever you're going to be. And if you only focus on what will be, if you only come up with a cool playbook and it's disconnected from the truth, it's gonna miss. And so that's
yeah. It cannot be aspirational. It has to be, and it can't be one person that you're holding accountable. It has to be everyone.
Yeah, agreed.
Yeah,
all right. Well, we are pretty much out of time, which is how these conversations go, right? When we get into it, we're like, seriously, it's been 25 minutes, but it has. And so, Adrian, I really want to thank you for joining us and being our superstar Carfax biggest brand ever on our podcast today. Again, we will be putting the podcast up in various locations, and you'll be getting all that information. But I just want to thank everyone for listening and downloading and sharing our podcast, and wherever you saw it, whether it be iTunes or Podbean or on our blog, go to those other locations and share it there, because we're trying to get the word out. But again, thanks for having us, and thanks for joining us, and thanks everyone for listening.
And that was the Culture Chat today. We'll have some highlights up on the blog soon. Find out more about WorkXO and how to map your workplace genome at workxo.com.